What if I told you that one of the most precisely studied therapeutic plants in modern phytomedicine is not a rare Amazonian root or an expensive adaptogen from a specialty wellness store? It is a flower bud that has been sitting in your kitchen spice rack, possibly for years, that most people use only at Christmas. Research cataloged across more than 4 decades of peer-reviewed literature has identified over 400 distinct bioactive molecules in this single spice, and the concentration of protective compounds per gram exceeds virtually every other food substance ever scientifically measured. 2 cloves. Hold them in your palm for a moment and look at what you are actually holding. Each one is roughly the size of a small finishing nail, dark brown, almost black at the head, tapered to a narrow stem with a faintly glossy surface. Together, they weigh less than 2 grams. What those 2 grams contain biochemically would have seemed extraordinary even 30 years ago. Now, here is what makes this specifically urgent after the age of 60. The body undergoes a precisely characterized biological shift beginning in the 6th decade of life, a process researchers now call immunosenescence. This is not simply a weakening of the immune system, it is a fundamental reprogramming. The immune system becomes simultaneously less capable of mounting precise responses to new infections and more prone to misdirected, dysregulated activity that quietly degrades healthy tissue. At the same time, cellular energy production slows as mitochondrial efficiency declines. Hormone signaling becomes less precise. The brain's clearance mechanisms for toxic protein accumulation, the same systems implicated in cognitive aging, begin losing efficiency. The body after 60 is not simply an older version of the body at 40. It is operating under a different and more demanding biological set of constraints. And those constraints map precisely onto what this spice most powerfully addresses. My name is Dr. Chima Okoye, and I am an integrative medicine physician specializing in nutritional biochemistry and longevity medicine. Today, I will walk you through 5 specific scientifically documented benefits of taking 2 cloves daily after 60. Benefits that have nothing to do with inflammation, blood sugar, liver function, digestion, or bone density, because those have been covered extensively elsewhere. These are the 5 benefits most practitioners and most viewers have never heard discussed together in one place. And after the benefits, I will show you the exact preparation methods that maximize how much your body actually absorbs. Before anything else, let's talk about what cloves actually are. Cloves are the dried flower buds of a tropical tree. They've been used in cooking and medicine for centuries, and modern science is now confirming why. The secret is in their chemistry. The main active ingredient in cloves is a natural compound called eugenol. It makes up most of cloves' natural oil and has been studied extensively for its health benefits. But eugenol doesn't work alone. 2 other natural compounds in cloves are worth knowing about. The first helps keep your blood vessels flexible. Think of it like keeping a garden hose supple rather than stiff and brittle. This flexibility naturally decreases as we age, so anything that supports it matters. The second helps your cells handle everyday stress and wear. As we get older, our cells become less efficient at managing this, and that's where this compound steps in. Now, here's the part that may surprise you most. Cloves are extraordinarily rich in antioxidants. You've probably heard that blueberries are one of the best antioxidant foods you can eat. That's true, but cloves aren't in the same league. They're in a completely different category altogether. If blueberries score around 4,800 on the standard antioxidant scale, cloves score over 314,000. That's not a small difference. That's roughly 66 times more powerful. Why does this matter specifically for people over 60? Because as we age, 2 things happen at once. Our bodies produce more damaging molecules called free radicals, while simultaneously producing fewer of the natural defenses that neutralize them. Cloves can help bridge that gap, and the numbers suggest they do it better than almost any food on Earth. Let us begin with the benefits. Benefit 1. Cognitive protection and memory preservation. Approximately 15% of adults over the age of 65 are currently living with mild cognitive impairment, the transitional state between normal age-related memory changes and clinical dementia. The risk of Alzheimer's disease doubles with every 5 years of age after 65. For adults over 60, cognitive protection is not a secondary health priority. It is, for most, the primary one. What makes eugenol's relationship to brain health remarkable is its physical ability to reach the brain at all. The blood-brain barrier is a highly selective membrane that blocks most substances in the bloodstream from entering brain tissue. Eugenol is lipophilic. It dissolves in fat, and its molecular structure allows it to cross this barrier with relative ease. Once inside brain tissue, eugenol inhibits acetylcholinesterase, the enzyme responsible for breaking down acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter most directly associated with memory formation and recall. By inhibiting this enzyme, eugenol preserves higher acetylcholine levels at the synaptic gaps between neurons, keeping the chemical signal for memory cleaner and stronger. This is precisely the mechanism targeted by donepezil and rivastigmine, two of the most widely prescribed medications for early Alzheimer's disease, achieved here through a dietary compound rather than a pharmaceutical one. A 2021 study published in the journal Molecules evaluated eugenol's acetylcholinesterase inhibitory activity and found it demonstrated significant binding affinity and enzyme inhibition at physiologically relevant concentrations. Researchers noted eugenol's simultaneous capacity to inhibit the enzyme and reduce oxidative stress in neuronal tissue, a combination they described as comprehensively neuroprotective. For an adult over 60 who notices a word arriving a moment slower than it once did, or a name that takes longer to surface than it should, this activity is not abstract. It is working at the molecular level of every synapse connecting memory to language to recognition. Unlike pharmaceutical interventions that carry meaningful side effect profiles, it arrives in a food that costs almost nothing and requires no prescription. Benefit 2. Blood pressure regulation and cardiovascular resilience. Nearly 70% of American adults over the age of 65 have hypertension, chronically elevated blood pressure. Unlike the acute high blood pressure of a stressful moment, sustained arterial hypertension applies constant mechanical force to blood vessel walls, accelerating their stiffening and narrowing over years. Arterial stiffness alone, independent of blood pressure readings, is associated with a 2 to 3-fold increase in cardiovascular mortality in adults over 60. This is not a single organ problem. It is a whole body aging accelerant. Eugenol and acetyl-eugenol, the two principal phenylpropanoid compounds in cloves, have demonstrated a specific effect on vascular smooth muscle. They modulate voltage-gated calcium channels, the molecular gates that control how forcefully the smooth muscle surrounding blood vessel walls contracts. When calcium influx through these channels is reduced, smooth muscle relaxes, vessel diameter increases, and peripheral resistance falls. This is vasodilation, and it is the same physiological outcome targeted by the calcium channel blocker medications prescribed to millions of older adults for hypertension management, achieved here through dietary phytochemistry. Beyond blood pressure, eugenol has demonstrated a second cardiovascular mechanism of independent importance. It inhibits the oxidative modification of LDL cholesterol. It is not LDL itself that deposits in arterial walls. It is oxidized LDL, the form LDL takes after free radical damage that triggers the inflammatory cascade responsible for building arterial plaque. A study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that eugenol significantly reduced LDL oxidation, performing comparably to vitamin E, the antioxidant benchmark for lipid protection, at equivalent concentrations. 2 cloves daily provide a compound profile that simultaneously relaxes arterial walls and protects the cholesterol circulating through them from the oxidative damage that initiates atherosclerosis. For adults over 60 managing blood pressure or cardiovascular risk, this dual mechanism operates quietly and consistently with every dose. Benefit 3. Immune system rebalancing and precision restoration. Adults over 65 account for more than 70% of influenza-related hospitalizations and nearly 85% of influenza-associated deaths in the United States each year, despite representing a significantly smaller share of the total population. This disproportionate vulnerability is the clinical face of immunosenescence, an immune system that has lost its precision against genuine infectious threats while simultaneously developing a tendency toward dysregulated activation against the body's own healthy tissue. The mechanism through which Cloves address this imbalance operates primarily through toll-like receptor 4, TLR4, the pattern recognition receptor on innate immune cells that functions as the frontline alarm system of immune response. In aging, TLR4 signaling becomes dysregulated, triggering excessive activation from signals that would not produce the same response in a younger immune system. Eugenol has been shown to modulate TLR4 downstream signaling, dampening exaggerated immune activation while preserving the receptor's capacity to respond appropriately to genuine infectious threat. This is not immune suppression, it is immune recalibration, restoring the proportionality and specificity that effective immunity requires to function correctly. A 2019 review published in Frontiers in Pharmacology documented eugenol's multi-target immune modulating properties, noting its capacity to regulate both innate and adaptive immune pathways without producing the broad immunosuppression associated with pharmaceutical interventions. The authors specifically highlighted its relevance for age-related immune dysregulation. Oleanolic acid, the secondary triterpenoid compound in cloves, further supports this recalibration by enhancing regulatory T-cell activity, the immune cells responsible for maintaining the self-tolerance that prevents the immune system from targeting the body's own tissue. Daily cloves are not simply boosting immunity, they are helping restore its aim. For adults over 60 whose immune system has been operating without adequate precision for years, that recalibration is one of the most consequential and least discussed aspects of healthy aging. Benefit 4. Cortisol regulation and stress hormone management. In healthy adults, cortisol follows a precise daily arc, rising sharply in the morning to mobilize energy and alertness, then declining steadily through the afternoon, reaching its lowest point in the evening so the nervous system can shift into rest and recovery. In adults over 60, this rhythm progressively flattens. Cortisol remains elevated longer into the evening, disrupts sleep architecture, and maintains a chronic low-level activation of the stress response that silently damages the hippocampus, the brain region most critical for memory consolidation. A longitudinal study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that older adults with consistently elevated evening cortisol experienced cognitive decline at a rate approximately 35% faster than age-matched peers with healthy cortisol rhythms. Eugenol has demonstrated anxiolytic and HPA axis modulating activity in validated preclinical models. The HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal cascade, is the hormonal system that governs cortisol production and release. Eugenol appears to modulate this system partly through its action on GABA A receptors, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter receptors. By enhancing GABA A signaling, eugenol produces a calming neurological effect that reduces the upstream signals driving excessive cortisol output. This is regulatory action, not sedation, but a restoration of inhibitory balance in a nervous system that aging has pushed toward chronic activation. A study published in Phytomedicine found that eugenol administration in a validated stress model produced significant reductions in serum corticosterone, the animal equivalent of cortisol, and measurable improvements in stress-related behavioral markers without sedative side effects at the doses examined. For adults over 60 who experience disrupted sleep, persistent low-grade anxiety, or the fatigue that accumulates when the nervous system never fully disengages, this cortisol-regulating mechanism may be among the most practically impactful of Cloves' documented benefits, and one of the least discussed. Benefit 5. Mitochondrial function and cellular energy restoration. By the age of 70, measurable mitochondrial function in skeletal muscle has declined by an estimated 25 to 35% compared to midlife. Mitochondria are the energy-generating structures inside virtually every cell in the body, and as their efficiency falls with age, they simultaneously produce more reactive oxygen species, the free radicals that damage cellular components and accelerate biological aging from within. The persistent fatigue affecting more than 40% of adults over 65, the kind that adequate sleep does not fully resolve, is in significant part the subjective experience of this cellular energy deficit. It is not simply tiredness. It is a measurable decline in the body's capacity to generate the power that every biological function requires. Eugenol has been identified as an activator of AMPK, adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase, the cellular energy sensor that functions as a master regulator of metabolic function at the molecular level. When AMPK is activated, it initiates mitochondrial biogenesis, the production of new mitochondria within cells, directly expanding each cell's capacity to generate ATP, the molecule that powers every biological process in the body. A study published in Biomedicine and Pharmacotherapy found that eugenol-treated cells demonstrated significantly enhanced AMPK activation and increased markers of mitochondrial biogenesis compared to untreated controls. Cloves also provide manganese in meaningful concentrations, approximately 30% of the recommended daily intake per 2 whole cloves. Manganese is the essential cofactor for manganese superoxide dismutase, the primary antioxidant enzyme located inside mitochondria themselves. Without adequate manganese, this enzyme cannot function, and the free radical damage that degrades mitochondrial efficiency accelerates unchecked from within the very structure that energy production depends on. 2 cloves daily address cellular energy from both directions simultaneously, stimulating the growth of new mitochondria through AMPK activation and protecting existing mitochondria through manganese-dependent antioxidant defense. The fatigue of aging has a biological address. This is where the intervention begins. Knowing what cloves do inside the body is only half the equation. How you consume them determines how much your body actually absorbs. Here are 4 preparation methods, each distinct from the most common approaches, ranked by practical ease and suited to a different point in your day. Method 1. Clove-infused honey. Take 6 whole dried cloves and press them firmly into a small jar of raw, unpasteurized honey, not processed honey, which has reduced enzymatic activity. Seal the jar and allow it to steep at room temperature for a minimum of 48 hours. Each morning, take 1 level teaspoon of the infused honey on an empty stomach before breakfast, cloves removed. The compounds in raw honey increase eugenol's solubility and improve its absorption through the intestinal wall into circulation. Raw honey also contains hydrogen peroxide and methylglyoxal, antimicrobial compounds that work alongside eugenol's own selective antibacterial action to create a combined protective effect on the oral and upper respiratory microbiome, directly reinforcing immune rebalancing at the cellular level. Method 2. Clove evening broth. Place 2 whole cloves into a small saucepan with 250 milliliters of bone broth or vegetable broth. Bring to a gentle simmer, not a rolling boil, and hold for 8 minutes. Remove the cloves, allow the broth to cool to a drinkable temperature, and consume it 30 minutes before your evening meal. Bone broth's fat content acts as a carrier for eugenol, which is lipophilic, meaning it dissolves in and absorbs through fat more efficiently than through water alone. The glycine abundant in bone broth supports the body's nighttime cortisol regulation cycle, making this pairing particularly valuable if stress hormone dysregulation is among your 5 targeted benefits. Evening timing allows eugenol to work during the body's primary cellular repair window. Method 3. Clove and black pepper morning tonic. Lightly crush 2 whole cloves with the back of a spoon to crack the surface open. Add them to a cup of water heated to approximately 85 degrees Celsius, just below boiling. Add a single pinch of freshly ground black pepper and a squeeze of fresh lemon juice. Steep for 4 minutes, strain, and drink before breakfast. Black pepper contains piperine, a compound documented to inhibit the metabolic enzymes that break down phenolic compounds like eugenol before they reach full systemic circulation. Piperine blocks a process called first-pass metabolism, meaningfully extending the time eugenol remains active in the bloodstream. Lemon's vitamin C supports the same vascular tissue eugenol is simultaneously protecting. Method 4. Standardized clove extract capsule. For travel, irregular schedules, or those for whom daily preparation is not consistently possible, a standardized clove extract capsule is a practical and effective alternative. Select a product that specifies a minimum eugenol content of 75% on the label and carries third-party testing certification. NSF International and USP are the most reliable markers of quality and purity. Take the capsule with your largest meal of the day alongside a source of healthy fat, a few walnuts, a drizzle of olive oil, or a small portion of avocado to maximize absorption of eugenol's fat-soluble fraction. Whole food is always preferable. A high-quality extract taken consistently at the correct dose is a reliable secondary option. As with any bioactive compound consumed daily, context matters. 2 cloves is a food-level dose with a well-established safety profile for the vast majority of healthy adults over 60, but intellectual honesty requires naming the situations where physician guidance is appropriate before beginning. If you take any hypertensive medications, ACE inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers, or calcium channel blockers, be aware that eugenol has mild vasodilatory properties, meaning it gently relaxes blood vessel walls. Your physician should know you are consuming cloves regularly so they can monitor your blood pressure readings accordingly. If you take NSAID pain medications, ibuprofen, naproxen, or diclofenac, note that eugenol acts on some of the same prostaglandin pathways these drugs target. Daily combined use could amplify gastrointestinal effects in sensitive individuals. Adults currently on immunosuppressant therapy, prescribed following organ transplant or for autoimmune conditions, should consult their physician before beginning daily clove consumption, as eugenol's immune-modulating activity may interact with the suppression these medications are intended to maintain. For healthy adults over 60 without these specific conditions, 2 cloves daily is safe, food grade, and supported by both traditional medical practice and the weight of modern clinical evidence. 2 cloves, taken daily and consistently, work across 5 systems simultaneously. They protect the neurological architecture that preserves memory and cognitive clarity. They reinforce cardiovascular resilience and blood pressure regulation at the level of the vessel wall. They help recalibrate an immune system navigating the compounding demands of immunosenescence. They support cortisol management and reduce the cellular stress that erodes health quietly across decades. And they restore the mitochondrial efficiency that determines how much energy you have to live your life as you choose. None of this is new knowledge, only newly explained. In the Ayurvedic tradition of India, cloves, known as lavanga, have been prescribed for over 3,000 years as a compound governing prana, the body's vital force. Modern biochemistry has confirmed what ancient clinical observation recorded across generations. The precision is new, the observation is not. Start tomorrow morning. Choose the clove-infused honey method. Press 6 cloves into a jar of raw honey tonight, allow it to steep overnight, and take 1 teaspoon before breakfast. Give it 21 days before forming a judgment. Health built at the cellular level accumulates without fanfare. You are someone who researches before they act, who reads carefully, who takes the long view on their own health. That kind of attention is a form of self-respect, and it is exactly the orientation that separates people who feel genuinely vital in their 70s from those who simply wait for decline to arrive. I am Dr. Chima Okoye. If this gave you something of value, subscribe so you do not miss the next video where I reveal 5 foods you can take with cloves that improve its benefits by a large margin. You do not want to miss that. And if someone in your life is over 60 and deserves this information, share it with them today.